button on it.
There we go. There we go. That must work.
There you are.
That worked.
Yep. So we're running through right now, just doing roll call vote for attendance. So went through. So in the room tonight, Aqua, Selena Miranda, Mark Loring, myself, and then online, John Cohane, Scott Tereshak.
Present.
Yeah. You there, Tim?
Yes, I'm present. I didn't hear you say my name. Sorry.
That's fine. Sorry, just double checking audio too. So second thing on the agenda is citizen speak. We reserve the first 15 minutes of the meeting for any citizen that would like to speak. We ask that you hold your comments to 3 minutes and please state your name and address. There's nobody in the room with us tonight. So just look online, see if anybody raises their hand. And not seeing a hand raised, so we'll move on. So item 3 on the agenda, just pull it up, take a look. We've got the band practicing next to us, so you may hear some background music, so enjoy. Item 3 is approval of our past meeting minutes, Monday, September 9th, 2024. So in your meeting packets that PMA sent along this week, or last week, we should have copies of the minutes, so just see if anybody has adds, edits, or revisions that you may have.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for September 9th, 2024.
Okay. Second by Dr. Miranda. Any further discussion? Seeing none online. All right, so we'll do a roll call vote because we're remote. Aqua?
Abstain.
Okay. Dr. Miranda?
Abstain.
Mark Loring?
Yes.
John Cohane?
Yes.
Scott Tereshak?
I'll abstain. I was not present.
Yeah. And Tim Lombard?
I'll abstain, although I did watch the whole thing after, but I was not present.
Okay. And myself, yes. It's all right. So move on. Sorry about that. Item 4, old business. So item 4A is a schematic design update from our friends at Arrow Street. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Shnali and Larry and Andrew.
So quick update, we met with the working group last week where Jade from Terra Inc., our landscape architects, was there to present the latest iteration of what the exterior of the middle school and high school would look like.
James, you going to share your screen?
Can you, and then you can get close to that.
Okay. Yep. Sorry. Give us 1 second while Seamus becomes a co-host and shares the screen. Okay. Cool. Yep, you're live. It's all good. Full screen looks fine.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a second screen for you.
Can everyone see it online? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So I'll let Eric just talk when
Okay.
you change.
Okay,
slides.
great, thanks. So part of the process of working with the landscape architect is going back and forth with them as well as the civil engineer to navigate the different ground elevations. The site has somewhat of a slope, and the way we oriented the building was to minimize any of the disruption to the landscape, but we still have to talk about the accessibility, where the play area is, and how to navigate around the building. So I'm going to walk through the landscape plans, and then I'll hand it over to Andrew to talk about how the architecture has responded to some of these things. And I'm gonna actually stand up next to the screen. So we can see where the middle school has been cited and then the pre-K. And as you can see here, faint lines, this is the drive coming through into the parking lot of the pre-K area. That drive actually is intended to continue for the fire access road, but we want to make it much nicer so that when it's not in use, that it's an opportunity for exterior play area connection between the middle school and the pre-K. So the idea is that this sort of outdoor plaza fun zone starts here and then becomes an enclosed area for the pre-K to meet their outdoor play needs. And then behind the middle school, there's a lot of different opportunities, but it could be a step seating zone, an outdoor patio area with chairs, some sort of exterior learning space that we're developing, and we got feedback from the working group on how to develop that. And as you can see from the photos, Jade and her team have put together some existing projects that show how the look and feel of that outdoor area could be. So one thing to realize is the ground floor, and I'm going to be a little technical, so if you have some questions, please ask. So the ground floor is set at an elevation of 55. But the field over here is at an elevation of 70. That means there's a 15-foot change in grade between where we are here and this basically a hill behind the building. So what that does is, if you see here, there's a wall that Jane is trying to figure out, how do we keep the dirt up, basically? How do we keep it from spilling into that space? That makes it a really tall wall. And so the challenge for us has been to figure out how do we navigate that and make it feel nice without being exterior play space in the shadow, because not something. So if we go to the slide, this is a slightly enlarged version. So this is Jane's sort of first version, and you can see how the architecture is slightly adjusted and responded, which is going to go to deeper detail. She's put a step seating zone here and its wall, and so this area is at plus 70. And this, when we see plans, is the entry in coming through the cafeteria, right? So you have a straight glassy view. It's going to look amazing, but it's still this 15-foot tall high wall. And sorry, can you go back to the previous image? Typically, what Jade's suggesting is that some zones of that could be vertical play area, right? You know, we could take the wall and engage it in some way so that it's occupiable, it's active, and take advantage of the fact that we have this height. So that's one of the options that we're looking for. And so in the architecture part, we'll talk about how we're navigating this a little bit more, but I just want to put some of the key places we have it acknowledged here. So the idea is to have this open play area with a variety of structures, some murals, things to make it vibrant and fun. She's also drawn in a canopy area for shaded play. So shaded play, if you've been reading the Globe and the New York Times, has become a really important part of the conversation when we're talking about play areas. A lot of play areas have been asphalted over and then they paint stripes and things to make it fun. But what people are realizing is you need more landscape and shaded area to make it comfortable for everybody. So this is one of the gestures that they put in to make it more comfortable and fun for the kids. And all of this is accessible. So this is meets the ADA requirements and it's navigating these existing slopes. So more examples of that vertical play area, different heights for little kids, for older kids. So we talked to a working group about what wasn't acceptable, and we'll start integrating a little bit more of those options. But in the next slide, I'm going to hand it over to Andrew, because he's going to talk about how this impacts architecture and what we've done to sort of make it more interesting from the building side. Before I hand it over, though, are there any questions about Play area. I went through it very quickly.
So the tags on the plan for C and D, those correspond to where she's anticipating some of this stuff.
Yeah, so
Yep.
each of these pictures are, so the C's are the slope play areas.
Yep.
The D's are the fitness interactives over here.
Yep.
So that would be for the older kids and the C's are for the younger kids. And if we go back. So the walls and the messaging would be also over here. And that's actually a really good point because as you're driving through here, you can see welcome to Milton or Milton Middle and School and Preschool or some logo or some fun thing to sort of activate that zone. And then B is the seating options here, which would be in this zone right there. So basically it's a multi-use project, right? This part is primarily for the pre-K, but this area up here can be mixed. You could have the younger and the older kids, but there would be direct connection from the inside of the building directly out.
I have a quick question, Sean. Just the orange line, kind of preview of this being at the other meeting, but like that is the edge of the landscape designer's scope in terms of what they're looking at
Right now for this,
for this phase.
for this initial sort of conceptual, where's the play area, there are gonna be retaining walls. I know this is a big area of concern because retaining walls are expensive and we are working with our civil engineer to mitigate. Some of the options are one is to have the retaining walls. Two is to feather the landscape back and pull back a little bit more so we can reduce the amount of the retaining walls. It's also not to have one continuous height, but to have it step down a little bit so that we're not obstructing views. We're trying to be sensitive to the amount of trees on the site, of like how many are we taking down, how far is it going to feather down, can we increase the amount of play area? These are all the things that we're trying to do right now, so I don't necessarily have definitive answers, but these are the things that we're thinking about. How do we make this the most enjoyable space, but still safe for the kids without sort of too many trees?
But the parcel itself does have that little wing, whatever
Yes.
it is, that kind of loops around the
Yes.
corner.
Which you're not seeing here, but yes, it does. And so we're thinking of it. Did we go to the- So we were thinking of that, if we were to feather it, it would come out into sort of like a little bit of a bowl shape. And so right now, those drawings are with the civil engineer to see if we can get it.
So what's the purpose of this presentation? Was to select what we want it to look like? Are you sharing thoughts for us to ponder?
So we're just showing an update of where we are in the project. We have to go back and incorporate some of the working group commentary, but also when we start talking about the architecture, you're going to see bigger changes in how we responded to these landscape updates and take it back to the civil engineer, take it back to the landscape, and keep doing this collaborative back and forth process till we get something that works with mitigating the retaining walls, getting the appropriately sized play area, and then getting the architecture and the inside of the building to work the way that you and the working group want.
So this is information. You don't have an ask of us.
I don't have an ask, but opinions are welcome.
I would put, my perspective of like doing this stuff is if somehow they are way off base in kind of what they're presenting or thinking about, that's very different than what you were thinking and the rest of us are thinking. And this would be a good time to tell them, you're way off base. We need to pivot significantly. Otherwise, it's not like, hey, I like the roller, slide better than the findings. That's a level of detail. That's not useful.
Thank you.
Yeah, and one other thing on it too is, as we're going, the decisions will start coming once we get into more of the design development, those documents there. At those times too, we're gonna have numbers against a lot of this stuff. So, during that, obviously, as we were talking, if there's a lot of retaining walls, we may not be able to put a lot of, play structures. But it's essentially going to be a balance of the design and the budget as we're moving forward too. So when we're getting to those times for decisions, we won't present it and say, make a decision immediately. we'll thoroughly kind of go through it and dive into it.
You touched upon, I was
Yep.
gonna ask what's the numbers like? So, it may look beautiful, but how much more?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, I think, to be clear, though, there's some numbers within
Mhm.
the number we already got, 173, that
What's the number
covers.
in that one?
I don't know if we're exactly within that budget, but then, again, there were numbers within there that assumed we were doing some landscaping, playground structures.
Yeah, we had provided, the cost estimator, Peter, with a sketch that outlined what we estimated to be the amount of retaining wall. Very conservative with that number to make sure, we're gonna get everything in. And now we know where we are and we're trying to figure out if we can cut back on it, basically.
That's my initial reaction is like, it's a very creative way to approach sort of the challenge with the site. And it does give a lot more play options for kids than they have right now in their current sites. Especially for the little ones. I think it looks great. Just the possibilities.
I'd say thank
Obviously,
you
there are
very
choices
much.
to be
Thank
made,
you.
but I think there's just more opportunities there.
Yeah, so the one other thing I'd say too, back on cost, is when we met with the cost estimator, there were narratives for all the landscaping and stuff like that. So that's essentially where he developed some of those project narratives that we put in there, help them develop that overall budget.
Mhm.
Can you remind, what are the dimensions of the space next to the pre-K building, kind of from essentially that size of that pre-K play structure? Yeah.
A little less than 70, about 60 feet.
But I can get your number.
That's fine.
About the same size as the building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's roughly.
So the other one too is in the corner where the shade structure is, I just know from walking the site multiple times. The topography, like you were saying, the 15 feet is up at up at that corner. Yeah, if you're on Gao Road and you're there, you look at the field, you're 15 feet up. But as you walk across the site, you get to where the shade structure is, it
It
starts
does
getting a
taper.
lot less.
Yeah, it is, there's still a differential, but
Yep.
it's not, sorry, I didn't make that
Yep.
clear. The 15 feet is just where the field is, and then it tapers down. So you're gonna have a less substantial retaining wall, but you'll still need something because it actually tapers down lower here. So you need the retaining wall to hold it in the reverse.
I just said that so everyone doesn't think it's a 15-foot retaining wall, it's gonna be all the way over there.
Throw it window.
Still pretty good size though.
Mhm.
It's going from like 4.5 feet up to 9 feet along the bottom there. So we definitely like to reduce that, for all the different reasons you can imagine.
See if anybody online, nope, nobody has their hand up.
But, maybe right.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yeah, let me just turn the audio up a little, Andrew. Sorry.
Okay.
Try that again.
Okay, does this sound like it's loud enough?
Much better. Yep.
Great. Okay, so I'm gonna walk us through some of the updates we've made, primarily focusing on the first and second floor and how the architecture and layout of the building is responding to the issues that Shonali just summarized. And then I will walk us through some updates to the other parts of the building as well after that. So what we'll do is we'll start on the first floor plan, which we've got here. We'll quickly go up to the second floor to kind of talk about how these issues play out across those two floors. And then we'll come back down to talk about some other just sort of plan updates that are not related to the landscape, but are good to know. So the first thing is that as you know, we're dialing in the topography and where that falls exactly with respect to the building, as Shonali was mentioning. We've realized that it may be, a more efficient approach to let the building serve as the sort of retaining wall adjacent to the athletic fields. And I'm going to try this. Is this showing up? This is supposed to be a vanishing pen. Is that?
We saw that, yes.
Yeah.
All right. So area that's sort of shaded in this light gray here is essentially at this plan level below grade, which is to say there's no access from the first floor outside here. And you may recall that in an earlier version of the plan, we were looking at locating our cafeteria sort of on this corner with the hope of kind of developing an outdoor space on this side of things. And we've come to realize that that's, what that would require is more retaining wall than we think is desirable on the project, and thought, hey, what if we let this edge of the building actually, since we're building this foundation anyway, let that serve as the retaining wall. And as such, what we've done is sort of these gray rooms that you see in the plan here. We've started to relocate things like back of house, mechanical space, electrical space, storage along this edge where you don't need to have windows and things like that, where previously we were looking at some classroom spaces. And so this kind of creates a nice relationship of putting things that don't need to have windows, along that edge where it's going to be below grade and hard to get natural light in. And what that's done is sort of relocated the cafeteria a little bit. It's pushed it to the left on the page. And so what you've got here in the orange is the cafeteria space. And what that means is that as you're kind of entering the building, this red arrow that's dashed is indicating the main entry on the first floor. There's this public sequence that we're setting up that brings you into this cafeteria space, which would have a glass wall on this edge, which is south facing, and will give us lots of natural light and sort of, we imagine developing sort of little outdoor court here for when the weather's nice. There can be some outdoor seating in that area. So here's where we're going to go upstairs quickly. So when we come in, you'll see that the plan is sort of organized around this triangular shape, and this is really this ceremonial stair that connects the first and second floor and creates a kind of double height volume space. And it becomes a kind of organizer of the plan that shows up on the different floors. And it's a nice moment in the building that lets lots of light in, orients the students, and becomes a sort of feature. And so when you come in, you will go up the stairs. And Seamus, if you could take us to the next slide. You arrive on this landing here. And now where we're at is actually the same level, more or less, as the athletic field, which is located over here. This is the edge of the athletic field. And what that allows us to do is to create an outdoor connection where we step out through this wall onto some sort of a terrace, and it may have this shape, which is currently following the building below, or it could be slightly different. But then the green is the landscaped area that you're seeing here. And this is, an abstraction and not as specific as the types of things you just saw from our landscape architect, Jade. But the idea is that, because we are working with the grade instead of against it, you can kind of come out here and then circulate either kind of slowly down the slope towards Guile Road and eventually to the high school, which is up here on this plan, or come down towards the pre-K in that direction. And so we thought that's sort of a nice way to connect, down below, you're kind of coming in, working your way up, and then you have the ability to kind of step outside. And there's the potential for, connections to this athletic field, more or less directly, depending on what the high school thinks about that. And if nothing else, you can circulate around it to get up to the high school without having to go through the parking lot. Okay, so let me just pause there for a second. Are there any questions about that relationship between the first and second floor? And then if not, we'll go back down and talk about some other layout adjustments.
I just want to say that the landscape drawings and the architectural drawings are not 100% in sync, right? Because we're working hand in hand, and one of us is always going to be 2 steps behind or 2 steps ahead. But the idea is Jade is starting to show the upper story. We're talking about this connection from the architecture outside, but what we're working on is, as Andrew was pointing, if you came out and you turned right and you headed towards the preschool, how do you get your way back down? Because it's still a pretty big drop. So we haven't quite gotten to the right answer, but Jade and the teams are working on that. But if you look at the drawings really closely, they're not 100% in sync because they're still work in progress. I just want to put that there.
If we go to the first floor, we need to go back. The classrooms in front of the grade area, can you speak more to that? What grade is that? How, are there windows there?
Yes, thanks. So these classrooms all get natural light along this side of the building. And thank you. What we're currently imagining is that this is where the 4 world language classrooms are located, along with some of the special education programs. And so they still operate as a kind of cluster and a sort of destination that when you're going to a world language class, you are coming to this part of the building. One of the things that we're working on is looking how we can create some breakout space somewhere along this corridor so that we can break up the kind of length of the corridor and there can be a gathering space for the students along there.
All right, Scott, you get your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to ask about just natural light along that wall, but it looks like it's all back of the house type rooms for the most part. So that's good to see. That's all. You pretty much answered my question by zooming in here.
Yeah, and we were one of the reasons that we were going in this direction here was that we were finding it was going to be difficult to get, natural light through this wall. If there were going to be classrooms there, it was going to require a lot of earthwork and retaining wall work that we think that money could be better spent elsewhere in the project.
But the quality of that light would not be great, right? Because you're looking out to a 15-foot wall, you're always going to be in shadow. You don't have a great view. So
It's north facing as well, isn't it?
Mhm.
It's north facing as well.
North facing is actually
This is north here.
yeah.
It is.
North is up, so yeah, it is.
Yeah, but it would have that nice light well feel to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It surprised me when I heard that too, but it's reflected.
So one of the things that makes it exciting, at least to us from the design team, is we've always talked about it being a campus, right? You have the high school, you have the middle school, you have the playground fields and the preschool. By being able to exit at the second floor, you can still have that connection to the high school. That's a lot easier as a pedestrian, as a student. If you have a brother and sister up at the high school, you can go meet them, vice versa. If you want to have high school students come to the middle school to do tutoring or some sort of like early education programs or whatever, then that makes that connection a lot more valuable.
Yeah, if you go up to the second floor for a second, just to pick up on Shonali's comment, if you could zoom in a little bit on the center of the plan there. This second floor is kind of an exciting setup programmatically because we've got the media space and the associated guidance. We've got arts, STEM, and tech. All of these sort of elements are sort of, these lobes around that center space and accessible from the outside and in. So if, one of the things that's becoming more common in education and the relationships between middle school and high school is sort of mentoring opportunities between the high school students and the middle school students. You could imagine the high school students coming in and sort of meeting, in the library and it being a very natural and sort of welcome, connection between the two schools. If there's not, well, why don't we go down to the first floor and I'll sort of continue walking everyone through the current organization. And then as questions come up, please just jump in. So I think we touched base on this sort of northern wing a little bit. And Seamus, if you wouldn't mind zooming into the kind of middle zone, I'll walk us through that a bit. So I started to mention the entry and the public sequence into the cafeteria. The other thing that we've done here is made some nice improvements to the location of the auditorium and music spaces. So this block located here consists of a 350-seat auditorium with the stage and drama. And then adjacent to that are the ensemble and chorus rooms, which have the ability to function as a green room. Sort of during performances, there can be warm-ups and people getting ready to perform, and there can be a connection between the two. Also, the location of the auditorium next to the cafeteria space allows the cafeteria to sort of act as a lobby of sorts for gathering and people before and after performances. But also, we think that there could be a nice moment as you're entering into this space, you're going to see and these the exact shape of the curve that you're seeing here is really more of a placeholder, but it's an idea that there can be some shape here that's sort of a nice looking and sort of creates interest to the overall space that you're entering into. So you would be seeing the light out through the south-facing glass and the kind of volume of the auditorium here. And we think that the sort of block of music programs, music drama programs are working well together there. This element here that sits between the administration and the auditorium consists of restrooms and the piano lab. And one of the things we've been thinking about and talking about with you all is how we can sort of make the plan very efficient for after hours use and nights and weekends if there's sporting events or performances. And we imagine that, there might be a way to close off, for example, a portion of the building so that you are kind of concentrating folks in this area. And it's nice to have the restrooms located for those events there. And then one other comment about the music before I move on. In earlier iterations of the plan, we had some of the backup house spaces located here. Those have sort of, jumped over to this side of the plan. And these music rooms are now in a kind of very nice location for getting south and west light, which is a really nice exposure to have for those programs. We've been developing the gym and locker rooms, still in progress, but starting to show more detail there. And the idea here that the locker rooms are abutting each other and the gym so that you can, when going to gym class, move straight through the locker to the gym and then reverse on the way out, which is an improvement over what's currently the setup at Pierce.
Quick question, Andrew. Sorry. So one of the things that pops in my mind is like logistics for trash removal, deliveries to the kitchen and stuff like that. With the trash and kind of storage or receiving on that corner, are you guys thinking about how to access that for that stuff?
Yeah, we are. That's sort of one of our next things to dig a little bit deeper into. It's sort of this push and pull where I think previously we might have had the trash that might have been what was on this corner, or it was somewhere back here, which has the benefit of it being easily accessible from this road. It got moved over here because we're the things we've been talking about the grading, and we're thinking through, how does that best work so that if there's an outdoor enclosure or something that needs to be located next to this, or do these things actually need to push this way again? That's something that we're looking at. So I think we touched on that in the working group meeting, and we're still working through it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So why don't we go up to the second level? So it wasn't just me last time. It seems to load slowly for everybody.
Andrew, if we could hold for 1 minute, I see John has his hand up.
Okay.
Yeah. The question. Go ahead, John.
Hi, I just had a question about the Cafeteria seating, the amount, I think cafeterias seem to be an issue.
So this is seating that's sized for three seatings, which I think we, through discussions with the district and the school, they felt was an appropriate number. And so that's what you're seeing in terms of the total number of tables that are located in here.
Thank you.
Sure.
What we haven't done yet is started figuring out what types of tables they're going to use, whether they're the long, thin ones or the round ones. A little bit of the, what works best for the middle school. We did want to point out, sorry if you can go back one, Seamus, the thinking about having, if you can zoom in right there, having a sort of quiet zone where could be enclosed and some of the students could eat in a more quiet setting, which can be helpful for some of the students.
Right, and you can close it off. Then it also serves as a secondary conference room after hours if there are events.
Okay.
Okay, so we spent a little time on this floor already just to sort of review. We've got this central stair and double height space that's connecting the first floor to the second floor. We've got the media and library space, and then the orange piece that you're seeing here is the guidance programs. And one of the things that we learned is that it's quite desirable to have this co-located with the media as opposed to down at the main office. And so we're looking at ways to have this, have you sort of arrive to the library and have the ability to kind of go off into the guidance area where there would be the opportunity for some overlook to the cafeteria below. And also maybe you could zoom in a little bit closer on that, Seamus, sorry. There's some conference space that's here that you could imagine being useful for guidance or for other uses because it's adjacent to the media and a certain number of offices there. We are aware of and sensitive to sound traveling. So one of the things that we're thinking about is that there might be a visual connection between media and looking kind of over to the cafeteria, but perhaps not, sort of a open air connection because it might be distracting. We also on this level have sort of co-located arts and the STEM and flex room and the tech room on this other side. So, and we imagine that there's opportunity here for either exhibition or media related. There could be that there's a book kiosk or something that's not, just in the main media space. When we had conversations with the school about strategies for media, we talked about this range of possibilities being, either that it's all in the library in the traditional sense where it's the destination. Some schools have done things where it's completely distributed throughout. And this is sort of, closer to where everyone seemed to feel comfortable, where they were interested with some amount of distributed media, but more on the end of actually there being a destination. So this allows sort of a both and approach where there is a destination media space, but there also might be an element of this that's a little bit separate that's a little bit more of an informal way of interacting with the materials.
So Andrew, the ceiling or ceiling space of the cafeteria is going to be two heights. So a lower
Correct.
One above would be the meteor, and then on the left here would be a much higher ceiling open up.
That's right. So this area here is the cafeteria below, but the cafeteria, a portion of it is underneath this portion here, and that's part of what we were looking at downstairs, where a portion of that could be set up as this like quiet lunch space where there's visual connection, but it's not the full on sound that you would be getting from a typical cafeteria.
James, could you go back just to the first floor, just so kind of.
So I can kind of, this zone would be below the media.
Yeah, it's basically everything adjacent to the auditorium.
This part. So the double height space would be this whole part.
Each chair coming in. No, that's good.
They're coming in like on
sleds. Yeah. Maybe these more rounded chairs.
Look on that one.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Andrew.
Sure. So then if we pan up a little bit, page north a little bit, just to get the rest of the floor plan in there. So here you'll see our sort of typical team structure that we've seen before and will occur on the upper levels when we go to those. But this is the sort of 3 core classrooms plus a science room and the related small group rooms, a teacher planning space, and the science prep room, organized around a learning commons space. So that's sort of one of the building blocks. This chunk is sort of one of the building blocks of the building up above, that we'll see when we go upstairs. Let's go. Yeah. Great. Thanks. So here we see on the ends of the bar, we have that same block sort of repeating. And then in the middle of the bar, we've done some work to sort of regularize the size of the classrooms from the last iteration. You'll see here that there's this kind of triangular shape showing up again, which is related to the stair space below. And so what we imagine is that this can begin to sort of stack up through the building and take advantage of this wall, letting in southern light, which would filter in and then down through into the building. And it really will help, when you're in the corridor, for it not to feel like it just goes on forever, because the corridor is broken up by the learning commons here, anchoring that end, another learning commons associated with the central, the team that's in the middle of the plan here, and the natural light that's coming in. This kind of breaks up the overall floor plan. And then we have this third learning commons here. And in between the teams, in these pink colors, are elements of the special education programs. And just to orient you, we've got restrooms in these gray blocks. And I think maybe new from last time is that we've separated out, after consulting more closely with our code consultant, we've elected for the time being to include a third egress stair. I think previously we were thinking that perhaps the stair that went from the first to second floor could continue to kind of wind its way up in this area. It has to do with the occupancy quantity that's on the third and fourth floors, and we're sort of on the cusp of possibly needing this, and so we've decided to, for now, include it so that and make sure it works with that. If we later learn that we can do without it, then we can have that discussion. But this stair here would actually, if you go down to the second floor, so back one page, Seamus.
Go back.
Yeah, go back to page 6, please. Thanks.
That way,
That-
the room is still right there. And then there's the ability on the upper floor, the ability to access those 3 spaces.
That stair will, when it shows up, will be here. And the idea is that it, when you're taking that stair, you then exit the stair onto this large landing area, and can either egress out of the building or then continue down the main stair. That's the point I just wanted to make. And then why don't we go back up again in the stack? So page 7, yeah. And then page 8, which is the fourth floor, you'll see is very similar to the third floor. Why don't we go ahead and do that one? So here you're seeing nearly an identical floor plan with the teams on the two ends anchoring it, and then this central team. The main difference here is that there's just a couple of different special education programs, but in the similar locations to the floors below. So that's sort of the update on the floor plans. Happy to.
Where is the elevator?
The elevator is located here.
So Andrew, on a similar note for like egress calculations and occupant counts, are you guys doing that for toilets, bathrooms,
Correct.
fixtures?
That's right.
and all?
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
So hopefully the next iteration, you'll start seeing those populated. We've gone back and forth with code red quite a bit about the occupancy. And as you know, it's two different calculations.
Mhm.
And what we've been focusing on primarily is the emergency egress population. And as Andrew was saying, that we've added this third stair because we're right on the cusp of that threshold. So that threshold is 500 people. And we have calculated 498. So we've added the third stair to the second we move a room, or we switch a room, or you add another person, 2 people into the special education rooms, we're going to be over that threshold. And I just don't foresee us getting approved to not have the third stair. So we're being really cautious. And if for whatever reason things change and we're able to eliminate, that's great. But right now, I'd rather err on that conservative side. So we do have 2 restroom banks stacked on each side of the floor, which will carry the number of toilet fixtures. I don't remember the count off the top of my head, but we've worked with Code Red to get those counts. I think we're slightly over the first floor because we have the locker room fixtures, plus we have restrooms over by the world languages, plus the additional restrooms that are in that center next to the piano lab, but we're leaving that because if you have a full auditorium or a full game, you're going to need those extra public restrooms. People are less likely to use the locker room. So at the moment, that's our perspective on it.
Any other questions? Don't see anybody. Andrew, anything else you need to update or weigh in on?
Nope, I think that's it for tonight.
Okay, everything looks great.
Thanks.
No other questions? We'll get moving. Yeah,
Just
feel free.
I can just make comments.
Yeah.
I just again, really like the changes you made. The idea of again having that kind of essentially what I'm having in my head based on how you're describing it, it's like this kind of glass column kind of right there in the middle of the building, right along that curved spine to bring the glass right into that what otherwise is a pretty dark hallway. Is great. Should look really well. And then yeah, I think the media center as well, having kind of be concerned about being too open in terms of, I know what we were talking about at the other meeting, just with all the sound coming from the lower level, given how open that would be. But the idea of having that, a lot of glass into or light into the cafeteria and out back. Cafeteria having a lot of light. I've shared similar concerns about just the logistics of receiving, especially if we're trying to have outdoor seating areas over there. Like, I don't know how you can bring trucks back there every single day for receiving. That is a concern as well. So I think that bottom floor logistics is still a little bit iffy, but otherwise looks great. Continues to look really good.
John, you get your hand raised?
Yes, thank you. I was wondering too, again, could I get a copy of that presentation? I know they tend to come out at the last minute and I didn't see it in the package.
They usually send them after the fact, because it wasn't in the package.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Take the link with it, after the meeting. In the current picture we're looking at, the upper part, there are two orange light colors. What are those?
Those, the orange colors for administration, so I can't read it, but one of them is a
Plan.
co-chair planning and another is an office.
Okay.
So it's for the administrative people. We've tried to distribute those types of spaces evenly throughout the building so that you have adults beyond just teachers on every level, which actually worked out really well for us when we made this shift on the second floor, because you have that whole cluster of guidance counselors right on that second floor, right near the entry, so that there's a little bit of control, adult supervision on the inside, outside during the school day of that entry, which was noted by the working group as well.
Mhm.
Just to do a quick summary for our next steps, we got feedback from the working group on the distribution of the special ed rooms. So we're gonna switch those up a little bit. There's staying as pink, but the names in the rooms are getting switched a little bit. They want to redistribute which ones are on which floor.
Mhm.
And then we're going to continue working on this connection of the inside and outside. Tomorrow, we're meeting with the traffic engineer to talk about refining the parking layout and the entry sequence, since we have so much information from the civil engineer and the landscape architect on how things are been developing. And so we're going to look to them to help us push the parking layouts a little bit further. And as we've discussed, we're going to keep working on the loading dock and service area, try to resolve that and try to get the fire access lane resolved. Code Red is reaching out to the Milton Fire Department to set up a meeting. It has not been scheduled yet. I'll keep you all posted if whoever wants to attend, just to talk about the fire access lane and how we're approaching it. So I just want to be clear, we are following code completely, but we're just running it by them to make sure that they're comfortable.
Okay. Yeah, could you send that to me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so I think like things are been, as Larry noted about the furniture, we're just putting the furniture in for scale,
Mhm.
just so that you can understand how it's populated. We did get the benches in. I think that was a concern in the gym. So the gym has been populated.
Oh, the bleachers, yeah.
The bleachers. And then we're working on some of the egress from the gym outside. So the gym has to have 3 means of egress. And as we know that we just discussed, that there's a drop off in the grade. So we're going to work with the civil engineer and the landscape architect of how to egress out of the gym. So those are the major things that we're working on.
Yep.
As we're heading towards schematic design.
Anything else from any of the members? All right, see none. Thank you, guys. So moving on, our agenda, item 4B, which is the MSBA update. So as most of you are aware, MSBA did a site visit to the district on, I think it was Tuesday, 2 weeks ago, or was it Wednesday?
I think it was Tuesday.
Yeah, I think it was a Tuesday. Apologies, the days are flying by. So, you know, at the meeting, it was well represented by the town. I believe there were probably 11 people from the town, including members of the select board, Mr. Cohane, members of the school committee, Mr. Loring, the superintendent. We were guided by the principals of Collie Cunningham. I want to thank Jordan Redden and Holly Concannon for putting that together and doing it. And essentially what they did, which was great, we created a tour essentially through the schools, and they went through this tour with an agenda that listed what rooms they were visiting, what the original purpose of the rooms were, and then what the rooms are actually being used for today. So we could walk MSBA through and let them understand, you know, this was a guidance room before, and now it's turned into a classroom or something like that. It was a long list, a lot of spaces, a lot of rooms. And essentially what we did with that many people, we had to split into. So MSBA, the superintendent, Dr. Carroll, chair of the school committee, went off on one group, Mark, myself, John, and Mr. Wells, chair of the select board, went off on our own other. And essentially we split up, we did Cunningham and then passed over to Collycott, went down to Collycott. We all regrouped after with MSBA and gave a short presentation to them, and essentially, had those slides there for talking points, so as questions came up. For them, they also brought their consultants with them from STV, which are professionals that augment some of their staff and dive through some of the statements of interest they received. They developed some questions for us regarding enrollment. They were asking about projects coming up in town, future developments for 40Bs, the MBTA community zoning. So it was, it was pretty good site visit. The one thing we got out of them that was unique or that was informative, the decision for if we get selected to MSBA will be coming most likely the end of November, from what they were telling us. Their board meeting formally announces it, but they'll start letting us know by the end of November if we're in, which was pleasing. The sooner the better we can figure this out. So that's kind of a recap, but I'll open it up if anybody has questions or anything, and feel free to jump in. I'll do my best to answer whatever I can.
Now, after the visit, do they require any additional information?
The only things they asked for was a number of units that are developed, that are on the horizon for developments through the town. So Nick Milano had developed that list of items there, and they also asked for a copy of the presentation that had some of the graphics and graphs in it. So yeah, Nick sent the numbers of housing units over. It was shocking. I'll share it with everybody probably at our next meeting. But for the number of units that are coming on board that are already permitted under construction or coming on board in the next year or two, it was a lot. So, there's some data that I'm looking at for that, just trying to figure out student yields from it and using the data that the consultant for the planning board did for 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom units, 1-bedroom units, how many typical children they yield, and then using that to kind of estimate how many children to kind of expect from that. So I've got some of those numbers already started, but I want to have, the town administrator, planning director kind of look at that before I go to. Yeah, John.
Yeah, I had heard too that they have like a standard formula, like they just need bedroom counts. And then they have a standard formula that they take off of the bedroom counts. And they were also asking for the DESE enrollment data, when that was available. I remember them saying.
Yep. And that was, I believe that was one that Peter was providing for them. So yeah, the bedroom counts that were there, if the impact study that was done for the planning board, they listed out on one of the slides there. So it's just using that public data and what they use to kind of calculate it. Once it's checked and confirmed, all that, I'll list it to everybody, but we're not there yet. Mark.
Just a couple of things. DESE enrollment is set as of, it's reported out during October, and it's set based on October 1st. So
okay,
that wouldn't be ready yet. I mean, again, we can share what our current enrollment is, similar to what I did the last meeting here, but that will be done kind of by the district in the next few weeks.
Okay.
Another couple of things I got out of the presentation just to share was that they said there are currently 28 communities in this current phase of the MSBA process. They said, again, it varies exactly how many communities get in each year based upon what their budget is, how many communities apply, and cost of the projects. Like tech schools and high schools are more expensive than middle schools and elementary schools. But generally, the average over the last 3 years is about 14 communities by my math. I share the numbers. That essentially means it's like a 50-50 prop.
Communities that they actually select.
Yes, 1 year was like 11, 1 year was 17, 1 year was 15. So about 14 per year. And again, that's not exact, but that's, if there's 28 communities in, 14 per year, that's about a 50-50. Again, with no other data, obviously, that other things, factor into that. The other thing that they reiterated with the process, which I thought was helpful, although disappointing, is it would be a 5 to 7 year timeline. That's the number they used to go forward with MSBA. So 7 years is a long time. They also reiterated the reimbursement rates. They said our rate for the current year, which does not mean that is what our rate would be, because it could go up, it could go down next year, but the current year rate for Milton is 45.32% of the eligible costs. So the reimbursement certainly would not be 45.32, it'd be a little bit less than that, but because not everything is eligible. But anyways, that was a helpful framing number. And then the other thing I just think we all need to be clear on and like message that to folks is, because I've heard this last year when we didn't get in, or the year before, is this statement around if we don't get accepted into the MSBA, that is the MSBA saying that the project is not needed, that there's not an issue. And that is like clearly not the case. And if we don't get into MSBA, all it's saying is that MSBA does not have enough funding to address all of the needs within the state. And they are triaging and addressing what they can, but it is not MSBA coming and saying we are, this is not a need within the town. I think that to me was personally clear kind of within the conversation and back and forth with them. So those are things I wanted to share.
Yeah, so one question I have while our architects are here too is, the spaces that we have, do we know how our program would align with the textbook MSBA one? Like, for example, the classrooms are going to get larger.
Right.
Okay. Any other kind of off the top things you guys have? And if you don't,
We probably have that somewhere.
I can go back and sort of update it to what today is, but you do have quite a number of spaces that would not be reimbursed, right? Your auditorium, the world language classrooms, there's some other classrooms that you have, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
no,
So
yeah, it's just off the top of your head.
Yeah, so-
we might want to dive into that deeper.
yeah, so we do have a working spreadsheet. I can update it with the current program, but you do have spaces that are not eligible. But those, from what we understand, are really important to the educational vision of Milton. And so those are the things that you'll have to talk about moving forward. Like the piano lab is a special space, like that's really important to everybody. But MSBA doesn't even have a category for it, right? So,
Usually though, that you put in those kind of spaces, because you're alluding, they just won't reimburse you for those spaces.
which is why the reimbursement number that Mark is talking about only applies to eligible spaces. So your ineligible spaces reduces your overall reimbursement number.
So I think to your point, Sean, it seems like it would be worth spending the next few weeks looking and comparing sort of what the impact would be of going with MSBA, just so that we're ready or we have the information that we need should we reach that point of decision.
Do we have enough? We'll be mindful of budget for them, because I know we're running out. Is that something we need to lean more on our OPMs for? Because we don't.
Take a little more money over this side so we can ask them.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Well, the one thing with the MSBA is we're not gonna know 100% what they're gonna
Yeah.
pay for and what they're not. We can certainly make some educated assumptions and tell you, okay, that, this is how many square feet you have, this is what you'd expect you to be eligible. We can make assumptions on what the cost per square foot cap is gonna be at that point. But until it goes through the MSBA process, you really just don't know. They're gonna go through their board and they might surprise you or they might not. And we'll just do it based on past experience, what we've seen, and try to get the best information at the time and spell it out the way we would go.
So question on that. So for cost per square foot, do they cap that at some point, even for eligible spaces? So even, okay, so even if we've got 1,000 square feet and it's coming in at 1,000, spaces that are costing us $1,000 a square foot, but they're only reimbursing us for $600 a square foot.
It's somewhere in the 650 range. They just upped it.
I'm keeping it very round numbers, just for the
580 or something.
Yeah, but again, just for everybody, just, you know what I mean? So that's $400 extra per square foot that we'd be paying that kind of reduces that down.
Correct. And I believe also design costs and OPM costs on that extra space, they're now cutting that out of the reimbursement as well.
Yes.
And then if there are ineligible spaces, that they will not pay for the percentage of the design fee based on the total square footage as well. So there's a lot that goes into these calculations.
Yep. So currently, if I remember from the cost estimate, we're at like 870 square foot. So roughly even just 173 that we're talking about, there's already probably 20% of it that's ineligible just on square footage cost. And then we're adding even more on there too. Preschool, was it covered?
We had them, they pay for preschool place, spaces, but they'd be a separate building, it brings into question, but I think we've done projects that they've covered, preschool.
Okay.
They usually lump any of the extra like nursing place or admin in together in your total admin space, so they might ding you on some of that stuff.
Gotcha.
Like a pre-K coordinator might just be admin, and they might not pay for that because your total admin's over that category.
Yep.
But the classroom space, we've had them reimburse that space.
Okay.
The one thing you have to be careful though is with, a reimbursement number, the quick math is to take the total cost, multiply it by the percentage, and then say, hey, this is what the state's gonna give us, we should go forward with this. That is not the way it works. So it's much more complicated calculation than that. And the more you can say that early on, the better off you are. Because I've read newspaper articles that have that math done there, and it's incorrect.
Well, that's anybody get a calculator? What's 173 times 0.45? I mean, it's roughly 50 cents. I just don't want the narrative for this. All right, so 77 million. I think we can all agree right now we're not getting 77 million as a reimbursement number. It's going to be something much below that, which is again gets to that effective rate. So, as we dive into this and start looking at it, trying to look at, really what that reimbursement number is going to be, and then work on how much longer it's going to delay us and elevate the costs and escalate the costs. Elevate the costs by adding square footages in, doing additional things that we're not planning for right now, and then build in whatever escalation that's part of that. And that's where we got to make that the tough decision when we look at that. So, but all that stuff needs to plan. And I agree with you, Selena. I think the next couple of meetings, now that we've got, a bunch of really good work, appreciate it. I love the connection to the field. Thank you. I think, diving into that in preparation for a decision coming in November, we should focus on that for the next couple of meetings or a month if we're doing that. Okay. Any other questions on MSBA updates or anything like that online?
Thank you for all you did.
Nope, all good. You wrote the SOI, so thank you. All right. All right, moving on. Item 4C is the fun ones. Review and approve project invoices. So our friends at Arrow Street submitted their invoice for schematic design. It's their first, they finished feasibility study. So basically a third of it right now. So this was in the packets for everybody.
I'll make a motion to approve Air Street's invoice for July 27th to August 30th, 2024.
Second.
Second by Dr. Miranda. Any discussion? Seeing none, I will do a roll call vote. Aqua?
Yes.
Dr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mark Loring?
Yes.
John Cohen?
Yes.
Scott Tereshak?
Yes.
Tim Lombard?
Yes.
And Sean O'Rourke, yes. All right, item 5 on the agenda is new business. As of right now, we got no new business. So we've got our motions that we put forward last time. I'm waiting to hear essentially from the select board for dates and times for, an upcoming fall town meeting. So, we're just kind of in a holding period for that right now. Mark.
But just a question on that. I watched the last select board meeting, was not discussed. I assume, again, that was somewhat talked about that in the last meeting, not to go into it. And I know Nick also, I think, was at that meeting. And so maybe that's why.
Yeah.
Is it the next select board meeting tomorrow, or are we on the next select board agenda? Maybe that's more a question for John.
Yeah. So, John, do you happen to have an update on that by chance?
Say that again. I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I was just wondering if, items related to the school building committee, right? Some of the stuff we talked about at the last meeting and the meeting before, were on the agenda for the next select board meeting for y'all to discuss as a group, right? What are the questions and the direction y'all are asking from this committee?
The only thing I can say is for sure, I mean, I can bring them up. I still don't have the actual documents for those, 2 articles, the 2 articles we talked about the last time. That's what you want, right?
No, I wasn't.
The funding articles?
I mean, I wasn't specifically referencing the funding articles, although yes, that is something else that we sent over, I guess, as a committee to the select board to ask to be considered for a fall town meeting. But I was more just the general discussion of the project and looping back to, I think, the request we had made related to, what are the items, what are the questions that remain from the select board, given the select board's vote not to put this out for a public vote in November. And within that conversation, right, certain concerns or questions that came up and wanted to answer. And we had responded from that, asking for you to go back to select board to collect those items so that you could bring it to us and we could have some direction to move forward in terms of what are the things we need to work to address, to answer questions or again, address the select board's concerns related to kind of taking this out to the public.
I have to say, I think part of the delay a little bit this time is Nick's out. His wife just had a baby and he's been kind of running this question part. Remember, he sent out the email afterwards. I'll follow up. I'll see what I can find out.
Yeah, the one other too, John, was, the original email I sent too is like dates for the town meeting, because, we've got our kind of warrant articles ready to go. It's just a matter of timing for everything else. So that's the big one we're waiting on.
Right now, what I'm hearing is that the town meeting's not going to be until January or February. And the reason for that is the operational override. We need to deal with the operational override, and some of those answers won't come in from the state until January. So I'm just relaying what I'm hearing as what those dates are probably going to be.
Okay, thank you.
John, a quick question for you. Is the next meeting October 8th? October 8th and no?
It's next Tuesday. Next
Okay.
Tuesday.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So just to be clear, John, of October 8th, maybe I guess there's some time for adjusting the agenda, but maybe not. But you're saying you're still waiting for, from the warrant perspective, the language of those 2 warrants?
Yeah, there were 2 last time it was presented on the screen, but I never got the actual documents. You know what I mean? For what were the 2 funding articles.
Yep.
Okay, so we have that to share with Nick and John. Okay.
Yeah.
And then
I'll follow up. I'll follow up on the questions. I mean, it went out to everybody, and I haven't heard. I'll see what this whole open meeting law. I don't know how many to talk to, but I'll see what I can do ahead of the meeting, because a lot of times I don't find out what's going on because I'm not involved in the agenda development. That happens like on Thursday morning, so I'll have to see who I can talk to. Usually it's Nick, and Nick's kind of out of the loop right now, so I'll do my best. I'm not,
Yeah, here,
That's fine.
I think previously you'd shared a document that kind of listed the items that we had previously discussed about.
Right.
Can you reshare that? And again, John, I guess I just say, given that it's not till next Tuesday, the 8th, right, we're more than 48 hours in advance. If that's something, I'm not sure if Nick's back or not, but obviously Richard, and the assistant town administrator, Nick, I assume we'll have to put it out at some point this week. If that can just be
I'll reach you.
conversation.
Mark, I'll reach back out to everybody with that email that went out to, I'll have to do it through Nick, but he can do that even this week, and reach back out to him because he did ask everybody for their questions, but nobody's responded. So I'll give them another prod.
Okay. Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right.
At the new business of
New business,
Something
bomb
we-
away.
I just want to share with this committee, because it's something that we talked about at the last school committee. To be clear, school committee has not taken any action, but there was a initial discussion of the programmatic elements for this building. It was specifically discussing the pre-K and, should we consider removing the pre-K out of the design of this building in order to reduce costs, reduce square footage, and again, discussing from the school committee perspective, the programmatic elements of that in terms of, our ability to still meet the needs of the staff and the students within the district with that reduced space. So, that was talked about last Wednesday, 2 Wednesdays ago, whatever it was. As an initial conversation, there was no vote taken. I'm not sure if that will be, I assume we'll discuss it at the next meeting. I don't know if we'll take a vote on it at that point, but that was part of the discussion kind of coming out of talking about some of the warrant articles that this committee passed, because that is, again, was a discussion of whether or not the school committee as a whole will vote to support that as we're passing along to select board.
Questions?
I have a
Yes, sir.
question.
Yeah.
Just for my clarification, would the pre-K be charging a fee with revenue generating?
It is not revenue generating.
Yeah, so just going back, I'm speaking from my experience at preschool. So at preschool, there is a cost for a parent to send their child to preschool. If they're on an IEP, there is no cost to it. So essentially what happens is there's some type of tuition. I don't know what it covers or anything like that, but there's some cost to parents. It's not a revenue generator. It's basically, if anything, I would assume it's like a break even. So, by making a bigger preschool, we're not going to pay for everything there.
Okay.
If that's where it's going. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. The other one on, I'm hoping, as I alluded to earlier, the new units that are coming on board through 40B developments or other developments throughout the town are going to start introducing kids, at some point over the next couple of years. So that, as we're making this decision, that's one of the ones when I'm trying to dig into all this data to do, to feed into them too. And yeah, John?
I just didn't understand what Mark had said. Mark, did you say the school committee is looking at not doing a separate building for pre-K? I'm not sure. Okay, I didn't know what I was hearing. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, school committee at the last school committee meeting began a discussion of removing pre-K from the new school building project. So, yes, no separate building, no classes incorporated within the overall building. Removing that as
Just for clarity.
Please.
Yeah, so what they were talking about, John, was, the current project right now that we're looking at for 173 million is to build an upper middle school housing grades 7 and 8 and a separate preschool doing the preschool components. By doing that, the elementary schools would pull out 5th grade and pull out preschool. So basically, taking the top part of the enrollment, the bottom part of the enrollment out, making enough in there that equates out to the 26 classrooms that we needed. If we only do the middle school component of this project and not build a preschool, we will not satisfy the 26 classrooms that we know we need. So that decision, the school committee is looking at, as something, could they survive with less than 26 classrooms? And I think that's where their decision will come in. So programmatically, the school building committee doesn't have authority to say, we have to do this as this. We've provided these as options. But for us, our charge is to, build the building and defer to the school committee for programmatic elements of what goes on in that building. So that decision, whether it's decided to not build the preschool, would come from the school committee, not the school building committee.
Correct, and that's what I was asking, because I thought he was just talking as school committee.
No, John, I think what he was saying was the conversation happened.
Okay,
There was no recommendation.
okay, that's the point I'm trying to get to. Thank you.
Yep, cool. Any other questions? Just double checking people online. All right, any other new business? All right, seeing none, we will move on. And all right, future meetings. So Seamus put a couple of placeholders on October 7th, which is next week, which I don't think we need to do, or 2 weeks from now, October 14th, if that works for everybody.
October 14th is a holiday, that's.
Okay,
We can skip it and get back on our regular schedule on the 21st.
I'm fine with that.
That's
That worked for everybody online. So October 21st will be our next meeting, 3 weeks from tonight. Give everybody a little pause, get ready for Halloween, do your decorating, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I think that's good.
All right, that sounds good. Okay, so I think our last thing on the agenda is adjournment. Yep. So entertain any motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, and roll call vote. Aqua Bond,
Yes.
Dr. Miranda,
Yes.
Mark Loring,
Yes.
John Cohane,
Yes.
Tereshak,
Yes.
Tim Lombard,
Yes.
Sean O'Rourke. Yes. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.